the way that the grooms were casually talking about blood, casually talking about sperm marks, casually talking about marks from the whip. That was very shocking to me. Obviously, I'm trying to not have my feelings and emotions in it, trying to be as neutral as possible when I'm asking questions. But I was genuinely shocked when I heard some of these things. I was. Because, I heard about it. I researched it. I talked to multiple people that told me about the conditions in there. But, as a journalist, you're obviously very critical when you hear these things. You're like, can it really be true? I think they might be exaggerating a little bit. But I must say, the shocking reality was that they were not exaggerating. It was like they were telling me. And to some extent, it was worse.
St.GEORG, der Pferde-Podcast.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jan Toenjes. I'm the host of St.GEORG, der Pferde-Podcast. And as you can tell from our title, it's a German podcast. But since we've talked to the journalist, the TV journalist, Rebekka Klubien, who was as a groom at Helgstrand Dressage and was able to take some pictures, some footage, which prove that horses have been mistreated there in Denmark. We did an interview in English and we decided also to post it in the English version. So, welcome once again. I'm editor of St.GEORG, Germany's oldest equestrian publication. And I hope you do enjoy the show. Hello, Rebekka.
Hello.
First of all, thank you very much for taking your time to talk to us. You have become quite famous in the past weeks because of your courageous job. You were the one that applied for a job as a groom at Andreas Helgstrand's Dressage. What we'd like to know is how did you get the idea to start this project?
First of all, thank you so much for having me. So the way that the whole project started is we got some tips from people that were concerned about how things got done and how things were at Helgstrand Dressage. I guess they wrote to us because they've seen some things up there that they didn't find okay in any way. So I started researching these tips and I started talking to people that have either worked there or been there in some way. And I sort of just mapped out this kind of, in a way, I would call it a culture, because a lot of people independently have said that there are things up there that are not okay. They've seen mistreatment of horses. They've been asked to mistreat horses. And, and then there's this whole aspect of just a very busy stable, lots of people working there. They have to get results, quick results. That's how it all started.
Maybe you can just explain briefly what kind of a program Operation X is.
Operation X is a Danish television show. It's an investigative journalism show. We have the host, Morten Spiegelhauer. He's been doing the show for 17 years. It's on the national channel, TV2, National Broadcasting Channel, TV2. It's all kinds of topics like money laundering, it's car thieves. We've had so many different stories on the show over the years. And even animal cruelty before has been a topic that we've looked into.
I bet you have some sort of a horsey background, because otherwise you couldn't just work as a groom in one of these stables.
The surprising thing is that I do kind of have a backstory with horses, but not in the way that you would assume would be necessary to work as a groom. I used to ride horses when I was a kid and when I was younger, but I never really did dressage. Like, I mean, I did it at the riding school a little bit when I was a kid, but I always were riding in the forest, never doing dressage, and not at all in this league ever. So when I came to the stables the first time, I was very overwhelmed.
But on the other hand, you were familiar with horses. You know how to clean them, and sure.
I am familiar with horses. I know my way around a horse for sure. You know, when I applied for the job, I told them I'm not familiar with the routines. I'm not familiar with being in a stable like this, you know. I never, told them I could do bandages. I never told them I was familiar with all these routines that you have when you have these dressage horses, right?
We can't talk about your fellow colleagues there, working there as grooms, but of course what we can say is that there are lots of people, because lots of riders and of course lots of horses that need to be turned out every day. So how was the onboarding process?
I mean, my first day was in many ways very overwhelming. Of course, because I was filming, secretly. Like, I didn't know what to expect. I never even went to a stable this big before. I mean, of course, I did my research, so I knew what the place looked like. But I had no idea what the routines were like. I had no idea what to expect. I actually just got told to show up at a time at a place. So I did. And we had a meeting in the morning, and I was told, as you see as well in the documentary, one groom was sick, so I could take over for her that day. And so I did. That was extremely overwhelming. I mean, they did tell me, like, I could ask, of course, and I did get some help from the other grooms, but it was pretty much just throwing me in the deep end.
And you have had an apartment or a flat?
No, I didn't actually. So normally the grooms up there, they live there. They have little flats and they stay close to the stables because you work so many hours. It just makes sense. And sometimes you have night shifts. You have that once a week. So it makes sense to live close by. But considering I was there not only to work as a groom, but also to do, of course, like my other job as well. I had my own apartment in the city close by.
Okay, so that was your first day. A groom was sick. You worked for her. For one rider or for more than one rider?
So the first day I was there, I worked for one rider. Since the groom was sick, I got teamed up with this rider, and I had to take care of all these horses that this person was riding. Yeah, it was quite overwhelming. Not like a soft start as you would probably expect. A lot of my time, especially in the beginning, was just me focusing and not falling through, because it is a physically very demanding job. You have to be very quick. You have to be very sufficient.
Like a factory worker a little bit, huh?
Yeah, I guess you can call it that, yeah. You can't walk around and just, do whatever little side hustle you have. So I didn't have time to walk around and ask people questions about, like, how's it going with the horse welfare here? Like, I was very focused on just, doing a good job. So it took me some time just to get it down right.
And did you see the bad riding, which you later were able to record also, right from the beginning? So did you, from the first days, had the feeling, gosh, there's really something going on in these stables that don't cope with animal welfare?
It didn't take me long at all to realize that there were definitely things going on that was not okay and not to be expected from a place with, supposedly very high standards. I think it was my second day there, I started talking to a groom that told me about the whip marks. It's actually in the documentary as well.
Oh, that was from the second day?
Yeah. It didn't take long at all. It didn't take long for me to realize as well that there were conditions there that were not okay.
Have you had time to watch that much? Because as you said, sufficiency is very important. That's what you learned from the very first moment when you were there. And I bet you just would give the rider the horse or bring it to the indoor arena and then take the one that he has ridden and return it to the stable and prepare the next one.
Yeah. So that was exactly the problem, because I didn't have time. I didn't have time to see the riding. I was so busy just taking care of the horses, just doing my job. And I only would get to see the horses of the rider I was working for. So I didn't have time to walk around and check the horses in the beginning, at least. So it did take me some time to realize, how am I going to get in to see the riding? And once I did get in there, I realized that, I mean, what people told me was true about the riding, yeah. And then when I first got in there, I realized, okay, I can not only just be in here filming from my jacket, because it's going to be weird. I can't just stand here. I need to have a purpose in here. And that's why I started removing the horse poop.
Ah, okay, yeah, I saw you there.
So it did take me some time to get in there and have like an excuse to see the riding, because, you know, when you work as a groom, it did take me some time to come up with an excuse to be in the indoor arena. So I didn't see the riding from the beginning, but however, I did see the horses when they came back, and I did see the spur marks, I did see the whip marks. So yeah, but when I found an excuse to get in there, I finally got into the arena, but then I couldn't spend enough time in there to actually get good footage of the riding. And that's when I came up with the idea of leaving my jacket in there.
Okay, yeah, it takes some time to figure out how you get the footage that you need.
I think the whip marks and the spur marks and all that speaks for itself. But if you don't have that combined with the training, it's not really a proof in itself, unfortunately. Like, one would assume so, but I mean, there's always excuses, right? But if you see the training and you see the spur marks and you see the whip marks, it's pretty hard to come up with excuses that it's not from the training. I mean, you can't, because everybody can see that the training is very forceful and not at all like the way that dressage is meant to be like, right?
How do I have to, or how does it look like in the indoor arena? Is there also a trainer, or are they training on their own, these riders, and riding the way that we have seen in the documentary?
It's a combination, because they do have students as well. So some days you do have a trainer in there. But the majority of the riders, they are hired to train up the horses. So they're professional riders, right? So one would assume that they have the proper training to do it by themselves. But no, so they don't always have a trainer. But occasionally there's a trainer in there, yeah. But I mean, there's a rider in charge. That person was also riding in there every day.
Did you ever see Andreas Helgstrand there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did.
Okay, so his version of being shocked and surprised of what's happening.
I mean, I watched him watch the riding. So, I mean...
And the riding was like that kind we saw on the footage.
Let me specify that, because I have watched him look at the riding on multiple occasions. But however, the clips that we do show in the documentary, he was not there. But on other occasions, when I was not filming the riding, but when I was at lunch watching the riding, he was there watching it, teaching. Yeah, so he was visible in the stables.
One of the most shocking moments for me as a spectator was when one of your colleagues says, this horse is always bleeding, this horse is bleeding most of the time, this is also always bleeding. When you heard that the first time, weren't you shocked or dazzled, or what did that makes with you, this sort of normality that horses are bleeding when they come back from training?
I mean, of course, the way that the grooms were casually talking about blood, casually talking about spur marks, casually talking about marks from the whip, that was very shocking to me. And I think you can tell as well from the documentary. Obviously, I'm trying to not have my feelings and emotions in it, because I'm obviously trying to be as neutral as possible when I'm asking questions. But I was genuinely shocked when I heard some of these things. I was, because I heard about it, I researched it, I talked to multiple people that told me about the conditions in there. But as a journalist, you're obviously very critical when you hear these things. You're like, can it really be true? I think they might be exaggerating a little bit. But I must say, the shocking reality was that they were not exaggerating. It was like they were telling me. And to some extent, it was worse.
Would you consider yourself a very courageous person? It needs some guts to show off there and film and do all that stuff that you've done.
If I were to consider myself a courageous person?
Mm-hmm. Or a brave person?
That's a good question. I don't consider myself especially brave or courageous. I really consider the people that have come forward in a documentary very brave. They have everything at stake, right? They're still in the industry, still working in the industry, and I don't. I'm a journalist, this is my job, and I think I had an idea that this story could be potentially a very important one. And it turned out to be. So, no, I don't consider myself brave. I just think that I did what maybe any journalist would do, right? If they were tipped about potentially a very good story.
It's not a good story, meaning it has coverage, but it's an important story to end what's happening there. Important story. For sure, not good story, it's definitely not a good story. It's in so many ways a very sad story. But nonetheless, I think it's an important story, because it has now come forward that it's not only a problem in there, it's a problem in many stables, it seems. Before we come to this point, just because many people here, not many people, but there are people in Germany are saying, well, you only see some 20-25 seconds footage. You had more footage shown to the experts. Is that right? Did I understand that right?
Yeah, so the experts have seen a lot more than we do show in the documentary. I think it's important to remember that it is a documentary that is shown on TV for normal people that don't know anything about horses. So when we do show a kick, and when we do show rollkur, clips of rollkur, of course we are choosing the ones where it's very close to the camera, so it's visible for people that are not interested in horses, that are not used to looking at riding, right? So the examples that we do show in the documentary are examples of many that we do have on camera. I don't know if you heard, but the critics out there, they do say as well, you have 200 hours, the same clips are shown in the documentary, and I do have about 200 hours, yes, but the vast majority of the recordings are me grooming a horse, very up close, filming into the side of a horse, right? But however, we do have about 9 hours of recordings from the arena we have shown a lot to our experts on the show. What we do bring in the documentary are examples of what occurs many times on the footage that I have. It is a few examples, but we do have multiple examples with more riders, different days, so forth. And we do show clips from 4 different days. I mean, all the days that I was there filming in the arena. Yeah.
What is the future? I mean, what are the results? Is there a public discussion about Helgstrand or about dressage or about horse sport in general in Denmark right now?
I think we do see a huge discussion at the moment. There's a lot of talk about animal welfare in general, but especially horse welfare right now. I think people are enraged to see this is what it's like in the biggest stable in Denmark. I mean, what does it look like in other professional stables in Denmark? If these are the conditions in the biggest one, the largest one, the most renowned one, not only in Denmark, but I mean, internationally as well. Of course, it's been very shocking, not only for, people that are not interested in horses, but I mean, in the horse community especially. I think people had a feeling that things were not always okay. I think people were a bit worried that things were not always done according to the rules. I think it's very interesting as well. Like there's like a discussion about like how do we judge at competitions? Like, the judging, is that what's forcing people to ride in improper ways? So there's a lot of interesting things going on, and I'm very excited to see what's going to happen, because I think we're going to see some change. I really hope we're going to see some change.
When you confronted Andreas, how was that feeling in that moment?
I think by this point I had been working there for 4 weeks, right? It was my last day. I was waiting to see him. I was waiting to confront him with the things that I had seen. So at this point, I was very interested in hearing when a concerned employee comes up to you and confronts you about these things, right? How is he going to react? And I mean, I was quite shocked at this point where I did talk to Andreas. I was very interested in hearing how is he going to react when I'm telling him about these things. Are you going to be concerned when you hear that your rider's making marks on the horses from poor riding? How are you going to react when I tell you that I see multiple riders riding forcefully? But, as you see in the documentary, he didn't seem like he was taking it too seriously. He did tell me, like, I am the first person to tell my riders that they have to ride properly, right? But he did also mention that you can't be too nice to a horse. And he did also say, in fact, that he was aware that the riders are doing this. So, I mean, in a way, it was very surprising, right? Because he didn't take it seriously. At least that was the feeling I had.
Good. Well, we will all see what kind of consequences are coming up. I mean, the Danish Federation has banned him at least from international squads, but he's still allowed to compete in Denmark on so to speak, normal horse shows. And some persons have now lost their license to teach or educate young riders. Any idea what else could follow after your documentary?
I mean, it's already had so many consequences, not only for him personally, but also the people, like his partners, trainers working up there as well. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think we have to look more in terms of how things are going to get regulated in the future. It's hard to say, but I guess the future will tell.
Yeah, the future will tell. Thank you very much, Rebekka, for taking your time with us.
Thank you so much.
Well, and that was it. St.GEORG, der Pferde-Podcast. St.GEORG, the horse podcast. I hope you've enjoyed our little English version. Thanks for joining us, and whenever we come up with another English version, we sure let you know. My name is Jan Toenjes. It was a pleasure to host this podcast. See you soon. Bye.
Und nun Ende Gelände. Das war St. Georg, der Pferde-Podcast.